We are back with Hearthstone Grandmasters here for the Asia Pacific region. We've got most of the difficulties sorted out. And of course, we have crowned Tyler as the champion over Dawn in a very, very close series indeed, Gia. But now we are moving on with the rest of the day. Still much more good Hearthstone to come here on YouTube. Of course, the home of competitive Hearthstone esports for this year. So make sure to click subscribe if you're enjoying. And Gia, what have we got coming up next?
It's going to be a very high stakes one yet again, because we're seeing another player like Dawn who is on the back foot, not the greatest record, has everything to play for to avoid relegation. We have FroStee up against Shaxy, and Shaxy, time and time again, I'm getting surprised by not necessarily what he brings, but the way he plays these decks. And I'm going to say, so far, everything is looking pretty standard. I don't see any room for golden kobolds coming out of the way to create a win condition I've never heard of, but I'm still expecting Shaxy to find some way to shock us.
Yeah, I think that the way I kind of see Shaxy, which maybe is doing him a slight discredit, but I think a closest comparison I can come up to is he's like purple 90% of the time. Like, most of the time he comes up with these crazy late game strategies where he can map out the entire matchup the way most players just cannot do, to be perfectly honest, at least not anywhere near as well as he can. And he just plays them so well. And then one in every 10 times he just does something really weird, and we're left thinking, what on earth was that? That was just such a weird play overall. But basically, what that means is that it is just always so much fun watching Shaxy play, because you just spend the entire game plan figuring out, okay, what on earth is going through his head here? And 9 times out of 10 is genius.
Yeah. So 90% genius and 10% what the heck is not just Purple's gameplay, but also him speaking, in my experience, every time I have a conversation with him. And that just makes for the most entertaining people, to be completely honest. I am so glad we get to see Shaxy on stream every weekend, because we might not necessarily see the same in the first 3 weeks of Swiss. And that's also true of FroStee, who didn't have the greatest performance in the beginning, had an appearance in week 3, but is definitely looking to turn things around big time for this week. Also bringing a Face Hunter, but with a card that we're not too sold on.
Yes, that is correct, Gia. For FroStee here, I was actually just trying to think, have we seen him win on stream yet? Because obviously in week 3, he came into the top 8 and then dropped both his games to go out. And then so far in the round robin, he's gone over 2. And I'm not trying to dunk on FroStee here, because I think he's a very, very strong player. It's just kind of astounding to me that he, at least on broadcast, just hasn't been able to get the job done. I think it is in part due to his somewhat unconventional lineups, whereas this week, I think he's got something much closer to the optimal lineup.
Yes, we're seeing pretty much, I think, what the majority of the field landed on in response to last week, which is Demon Hunter Warrior good. That's them all the way up to 100%, then get rid of Rogue. And then people were already on the fence about Druid. And the decks that popped out after those were kind of relegated out of top meta is Face Hunter and Zoo. And that's exactly what we're seeing from FroStee. And I do think we've seen FroStee win a game, but not a series. I do recall these series against Blitzchung. Blitzchung won that one game, but there was a game there that FroStee won.
Well, the main thing now is that we are heading into the Face Hunter versus the Demon Hunter, a very cool little matchup from what I can see, where you're obviously both playing very aggressively to close out the game before lethal. But there's a couple of, I think, cool tricks that Face Hunter has access to, Gia, that overweigh or help balance out the fact that Demon Hunter is overall the stronger class.
Yep. Explosive Trap, we mention it time and time again. It is so well positioned to deal with the early minions from the Demon Hunter, but maybe more so last week than this week, because now APAC has caught on to the trend of putting Gaming Sidekick into the Demon Hunter list, which can be such a huge deal to preserve Satyr Overseer in particular.
Really like just going for the removal there. You want to try and, if you can, set up for Phase Stalker on turn 2, although that is a pretty dangerous game you're playing, Gia, by just getting it out in play rather than guaranteeing the hero power on the same turn.
Yeah, you make a very good point, but I think because Shaxy has not developed a weapon or a minion even, it feels relatively safe. the 3 to come straight from hand, whereas he definitely would have played Umberwing there if he had it, would rely on a lot of resources expended, slices, and something off the top, something like that.
It really is so close, but there's, I don't know, there are quite a lot of punishes that could have come down there. Twin Slice, if it was in hand, wouldn't have been played yet, I don't think, because there's nothing to target. A Chaos Strike also, of which there is only one in the deck, but was also just a removal here. And because of that, I am just wondering if it should have been the side quest plus the Dwarven Sharpshooter that sets up for coin hero power with the Phase Stalker on the following turn. I think it's really close.
Yeah. You can make the argument for I-Beam too, but of all these cards we mentioned, I feel like if that's going to be Demon Hunter's play that turn, no development, just spending their whole turn to clear your 2-3, it still seems pretty good. Especially since if they're not developing minions, then your Explosive Trap is not really that useful, right?
Oh, and now for FroStee, he can get the side quest down, hero power straight away, the Explosive Trap in play. The problem is, of course, here that it is a relatively weak Explosive Trap compared to how good it can be a lot of the time if they're getting these aggressive starts.
I made the O sound because you made the exact point. I was thinking that this isn't the ideal Explosive Trap. You'd rather save it for other things, and the Phase Stalker isn't living to see another turn. But with the draw of the second one, I think FroStee can just take the turn to set up the first, shut off yet another turn of development in most situations with the second one, and then from there, hopefully get his quest online and just go for the burst with the Unleash and Kill.
And at the very least, even if this Explosive Trap isn't doing too much here, the main point is it's still getting damage to the face, and it was basically free. It's thinned out his deck, and it's still not that bad at all.
Tell you what, though, the second one I thought was going to be very, very good, but Shaxy's already playing his Beaming Sidekick. Protects it from the Dwarven this turn.
Even this turn wasn't so obvious, though, Gia, because Shaxy could have held back the weapon in order to set up for Glavebound Adept on curve on the following turn. And obviously he still has the Frozen Shadow Weaver to go for next turn, but that doesn't unlock Skull of Gul'dan for turn 6. I think I might have preferred just not summoning a 2-2 there in order to set up for so much more benefit on the next couple turns.
Yeah, I can see your point. Maybe it's aggravated by the fact that we can see the second one in hand for FroStee. But of course, Shaxy probably wouldn't expect the second one. But just in terms of the way Shaxy's hand is shaped, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I just really like setting up Skull for turn 6, and he's still got Frozen on 3. Frozen Shadow Weaver next turn, and then Glavebound Adept the turn after, Skull on turn 7, which is fine. We'll still probably put him in the lead, and this race is a lot quicker as well. Just really does show the complications that can arise when playing this matchup.
Sure. You can already see the huge difference that the Beaming Sidekick makes. FroStee is forced to spend the turn not really putting any damage to the face. He's setting up for Explosive. This is telegraphing it to Shaxy, and what a draw off the top.
That is an unbelievable draw.
But does it have to come down this turn, is my question. It probably does, just because of the way the mana is shaped.
Yeah.
But FroStee hasn't played his Explosive yet, so actually save it for an unexpected burst, because a lot of times as Face Hunter, you're like, all right, let me set up this trap. They're not getting any more face damage in through it.
Yeah. On previous turns, I think I was maybe overthinking it. Maybe not, but here, it is just a very simple case of play everything you can, get it all to the dome, even with an Unleash the Hounds that can do a lot of work here. Two of them, in fact. I think Shaxy's still in a good spot here.
He can set up for trades and then Explosive Trap.
True.
He could... Or send it all to face. All right.
Imagine, Gia.
I haven't counted the damage yet, but if this sets up the 2-turn with Explosive Trap, then I am 100% on board.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a 4/4 pig that can go face as well, in addition to Hero Power Kill Command. That's 11 damage, which means if even 2 piggies can connect, or 2 dogs can connect as well, that's GG.
Love it.
I think this is a very smart plan from FroStee.
he's noticed that if anything goes face this turn, that means that a couple hounds survive. And then he can just trade afterward. Because the 8 damage to FroStee's health is not as relevant to him as putting that extra damage into Shaxy's health.
Shaxy's got so much to consider here. Does he go for the Glavebound Adept in order to free up the Skull of Gul'dan?
The question yet again is, does this set up 2-turn lethal if he goes for Glavebound now? And I don't think it does because he can't reliably stick the minions he has on board.
Whereas next turn
So
he can go
for,
second Metamorphosis, Hero Power, plus Glavebound.
Correct. So I am definitely behind Shaxy's final decision.
As am I. However, he's just dead.
Indeed.
Ooh, he gave himself the best chance possible there, and of course he could be fairly sure that there was a Stone Tusk Boar in hand ready to go for him there. Ready for FroStee, sorry, to come in for 4 damage, but you can't play around everything in these kind of matchups, and overall, it was just a really good spot there by FroStee to set up a high chance of lethal on the following turn.
Looking back on it, I'm actually not so sure anymore.
Really?
Because he could have died. It works out for him, I think, both ways. Because going for giving up, I think, 3 damage to put all of Shaxy's minions to 2 health essentially saves FroStee 8 health that turn and possibly another 8 health the next turn. I'm not sure about the most likely outcomes. But if he had already considered that even if the 8 goes face, he could still win the next turn and be able to outrace even the best possible burst hand from Shaxy. It makes a lot of sense. I just wonder if any draw of I-Beam could have complicated things.
Obviously, I see your point that could have maybe messed things up, but then the secondary effect of that for FroStee is that after the explosive trap goes off, there's not that much damage on board, and he could have transitioned over to Unleash plus Trade if he really needed to on the following turn whilst fitting in the hero power in order to whittle his opponent down to that crucial 11 health. Maybe it gets more complicated with I-Beam. He might have ended up 1 damage off lethal. It really does just exemplify to me, though, Gia, how these aggro matchups are very much not so simple as they seem.
For sure. Every matchup tends to end just on a knife's edge. And we can see that for FroStee, he's still got his own Demon Hunter online. So that is a very, very big win for him. If we're counting Face Hunter or Hunter as a class, as the 4th class of the week, because we still just have 2 premium decks, and Zoo is so widely represented as well.
And now we're seeing something that I think may be a trend for this week, similar to how Rogue was a highly brought archetype that performed very badly last week. Druid, I think this week, may be the weak point for the players in Asia Pacific who brought it. In other regions, it is very, very lowly represented at all. I think especially in Americas. I'm not sure if there's any, if so, very, very few at least. But here in Asia Pacific, at like a 44% bring weight, I think that a lot of the players will be struggling to Demon Hunter, the aggro decks like regular Face Hunter, Zoo as well can be a tough matchup. So for Shaxy here, that I think, even if he's able to take a win here, will be his Achilles heel in the matchup.
Yeah. Actually, I think Druid is higher than 50% bring rate for this week. It was 44 last week, wasn't it?
Ah, okay, yeah. Well,
and you make a very good point. But bear in mind, here in APAC, we do have the Druid specialists, I would go so far as to call them, the Japanese players.
Indeed.
They just tend to make the deck work every single week. So I wouldn't count it out just yet. But hand for FroStee, pretty slow, I would say, especially against the coin scrapping.
FroStee giving the blinking guy in the GIF a run for his money there with the reaction to scrap him. Because what else can you do? This is really the most frustrating bit about playing against Warlock is when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they can just hit you with scrap him and there is little to no counterplay whatsoever.
The saving grace for FroStee, though, is that Shaxy's got 3 spells in hand. So it's as far less minions than FroStee's probably expecting to get buffed this turn. However, one of those minions is Expiring Merchant, and one of those spells is Hand of Gul'dan.
Yeah, it's not really the card that you're looking to buff. It's the worst scrap imp I think I've ever seen, but it's still just a very good scrap imp.
This is not the worst scrap imp I've ever seen. Anyone that comes down on turn 1 is a good imp.
Right, but it's the worst turn 1 imp I've seen, and yet still a good imp.
Okay. Well, the Kane can ignore taunt to still trade, which I never thought I would say. See anything better?
I don't. I like Kane this turn, and then I like Twin Slice probably to take out the Divine Shield, and then Glavebound Adept plus the second slice next turn to finish off the job.
Yep. Looks good to me. Shaxy's got the refill. We're seeing other Zoo players cutting the Serpent Egg, because I feel it's relatively difficult to get the full value of it. So I would prefer to see actually still the egg here because he's got the carpet.
Yep, carpet plus double 1-drop next turn. That looks pretty premium to me. Such a crucial card to find in this matchup. It just makes it so difficult for Demon Hunter to stick any board presence at all.
The fires of vengeance burn bright. The light protects.
All right. Shaxy says egg is not going to get buffed anytime soon. So it looks like a bit of a waste of mana. And this way he still preserves the Fiendish Servant for Rush in hand. One of the best rush targets, indeed.
Oh, the mana just works out so horribly, Gia. The difference between 1 and 0 mana I-Beam here is staggering.
It's 1, but it is staggering.
Yeah, well, sure. You win this round.
Our enemies will fall.
But look, it means he also can't get the Skull of Gul'dan down on the next turn unless he wants to cast one for the full 6 mana for not getting any reduction.
Eager to share.
Yikes.
Hey, I got you, friend.
And that's the reason why it kind of makes me scoff at the people who think any 1 mana nerf is insignificant. Out of the cards that got nerfed for 1 mana, we're not seeing Kael'thas played very much anymore. I-Beam is still being played, but the difference in power level is huge. I would say
really
probably only didn't feel the mana difference nerfed too much. Well, you could go Umberwing, kill off the Shield Bearer.
Technically alive, I guess.
Demons.
Hey, I got you, friend.
And while it is looking very desperate here for FroStee, I wouldn't even necessarily call this over. We were just talking about the power of Altruist, and one that comes in a timely fashion off of Skull of Gul'dan maybe can get the job done. Not anymore. That's just lethal, right?
Useful thing.
+3. Correct, that is exactly lethal, no matter where it lands.
There we go. Shaxy sees it 1 game apiece now. The Zoo doing what Zoo does when it draws scrap. I mean, there was little that FroStee could do in order to stop that, given just how his Demon Hunter hand was that little bit too slow. But with that out of the way, Shaxy is left with the Druid and the Demon Hunter of his own. And again, I do just feel that the Druid is going to be the weak spot for him, even though he does have the very unfashionable build at the moment, with Kael'thas Sunstrider still knocking about in there.
It's fashionable in other regions, and time and again, I think it has their own trend, but still a couple people willing to deviate. We've seen Surrender playing different builds of Demon Hunter, and honestly, sometimes the deviation gets you there, but for the build of Druid in particular, I feel like the region where Druid has been the most successful is APAC, largely in part due to the builds from our Japanese players. So I am still not sold on Kael'thas, especially when the list is not running a lot of the Kael'thas payoff cards like Gift of the Wild and Forest Aid.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think, based on how it looked after the most recent wave of nerfs, where Kael'thas was hit, even before the nerfs, I think you could argue that a 6-mana Kael'thas still wasn't that good unless you had Forest Aid and Gift of the Wild. In this instance, I think it's almost certainly too slow. But at the very least, it is a very Shaxy build of the deck, where it is maximum risk for maximum reward. It's like the questing adventurers that he had in both his Rogue and Demon Hunter last week, which works to great effect for him when he was able to just blow the matchups out of the water by making huge Demon Hunter questing adventurers right at the start of the game, which Kael'thas can do.
I've got a lot more to say about this Druid deck, but I'll save it because it's our favorite matchup. Coming up next, the Mirror for Demon Hunter. FroStee already with 2 I-beams in hand, one on the far left. It's very useful when you are going second, especially. So, Shaxy not wanting to play his Sigil Runner for no outcast value because it can just get either hero-powered or coin Umberwing down, looking to curve out with his own Umberwing into the Shadow Weaver. But that off the top for FroStee is absolutely huge.
Really is. Shaxy's plays are not, quite so clean, and he's not leading up into anything quite so powerful. But for the main part, it's still a relatively even start to the matchup here, and I could see either player pulling ahead.
Yeah. It does look very powerful that FroStee's got the Umberwing into Satyr over this year, but Shaxy's got the perfect answer to lock that out.
That's right.
Frozen Shadow Weaver to the face. I feel like face is the place where the freeze goes for once in this matchup in particular.
100%. Unless it's like a glaive-bound adept is facing me for lethal way in the late game. On turn 3, you always freeze the face because it shuts down so much for the Demon Hunter.
FroStee could respond with his own face freeze or just go for Spectral Sight and I-beam.
I think I like freeze coin I-beam. It
Sure.
really does put you pretty far ahead on board and sets up for a strong Satyr play on the next turn.
Yeah, he could then go Satyr I-beam again.
Right. He can still do that, obviously, but he just doesn't have the freeze and he doesn't have a 4-3 in play
They
now.
will never catch me.
It might be that he wanted to get the Spectral Sight Outcast while it was immediately available, because if you don't play it that turn, you're kind of committing to playing all of the left-hand cards.
That's fine, though.
before
That
it
only
gets the
takes
value.
that only takes 2 turns in order to do that.
Okay, that's fair. And pretty good turns, huh?
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
grow impatient.
Could also be thinking that he wants to save coin Shadow Weaver going into Shaxy's turn 5. Shut off something like Warglaives or Twin Slice Glavebound.
These are not really the cards that Shaxy was looking for. Twin Slice to activate Glavebound, Warglaives just to throw down on turn 5 was much more like it.
Right.
Time grows short.
I genuinely don't know what the choice here. This is really difficult.
I'm looking at Skull, but it's just made so much more difficult to play because he has the Glavebound where it is.
Well, the important thing now is that FroStee obviously still has the play we were looking at last turn. Of the Satyr, the I-beam, get everything onto the board, and basically make it very difficult for Shaxy to clear everything off, unless he hits the Warglaives, of which he's only running 1.
And we know he won't hit it because he picked the Satyr.
Exactly.
They will never catch me.
Okay, that's a pretty good draw. Lets him clear off both of the minions.
Ooh, there are the Warglaives.
Alright.
I got you, friend.
It's coming together for Shaxy from what he can see, but
Right.
FroStee's got both of the Shadow Weavers consecutively if he wants them. And his own Warglaives premium.
Okay, Warglaives on this turn. I was definitely tunnel visioning on the Shadow Weavers that turn because they were just so premium, but so off the top there for Shaxy. He's got some very powerful options here indeed.
It is so tempting to go for the Warglaives because both of his left hand cards synergize with it so well. But he
Yeah.
hasn't seen any of the freezes. And if anything heavy gets drawn, the skull will take forever to get the outcasts online. So I would like to
think
see
it's
the
skull.
skull here.
Poor
Yeah,
warlock.
very disciplined, and I think just the correct play overall.
It's pretty big because Shaxy can play Warglaves plus a payoff minion on the same turn, and maybe FroStee wouldn't want to freeze immediately if he hasn't seen the weapon.
He can indeed. And again, sorry, I mistook the list there. He is playing the 2 Warglaves in his list. It's the 1 Chaos Strike.
So we could just look at Glavebound and go for FroStee. It feels very bad to point out 2 Shadow Weavers because you don't obviously get the payoff, right?
I think this is a Frozen Shadow Weaver turn. I really like this from FroStee. You know, okay, obviously Skull off the top is a little bit annoying, but this is just fine. He can go Frozen Shadow Weaver this turn, attack face, probably because you got the Chaos Strike, you want the damage.
Right.
And then next turn, Frozen Shadow Weaver, coin Glavebound Adept. There is little answer from Shaxy that doesn't involve attacking with the hero.
Pretty much I-Beam and second I-Beam and Altruist.
Right.
Very good. And the Cane. But that's not an ideal answer by any means.
Mm-hmm.
Very well spotted. And Shaxy's got a hand with 3 weapons! 2 minions that rely on a hero attacking to get their payoff.
Demons.
Oh my gosh.
Demons.
He's likely going to end up equipping one of the weapons just to get the mana out of the way. And that'll give FroStee all the signal he needs to play yet another freeze.
You know what?
I
Eat your heart
grow
out, mammoths,
impatient.
because this is the most anyone has ever been messed over by ice.
You'll find it.
Does he just play the Glavebound?
Short.
That's just fodder waiting to be eaten up.
Strangely, it turns out to be the better play for what FroStee has in hand, which is another freeze. And the fact that he can buff it past the range of an opposing Glavebound, I think is a very big deal.
Fair enough. The second Warglaves are actually fairly interesting now because FroStee could potentially freeze the Adept and then kill off the rest with the Warglaves.
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
Still sets up for Skull on the following turn, importantly.
I'm looking at Shadow Weaver coin Glavebound. So freeze the Adept, as you said. Then he can use his current Warglaves to kill off both main. Oh wait, he won't fit in the hero power.
Right,
Never
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
Ugh. So maybe just kill off Kane. A 1-2 doesn't look very threatening.
And then you send the 4 face.
Mm-hmm.
It's aggressive.
Time grows short.
I'm suggesting the play purely because Shaxy's already played a Glavebound of his own. It'd be far too scary if Shaxy
Right.
still had both of them unused.
And I know it seems insane to say as well, but I almost wonder as well if it was worth going for the freeze on the face there. Just because your opponent can attack him with the 6-6 into a 4-3. But you're still pretty far ahead then. Probably slightly better this way, just because it does lock down the board, and Warglaves take too much damage to be useful here.
FroStee still could have ended up with this same board state with a 1-2 against him. The difference is he would have 3 less health, and Shaxy would have 4 less health. It's very tough to say. But now, Shaxy's taking a whole ton of damage.
Which means, as long as FroStee doesn't die the next couple of turns, his Warglaves should be able to close things out on their own, in addition to whatever help he can get off of the Skull.
Mm-hmm. And it's really tough for FroStee because he could say option A is have the Warglaves, 1 attack immediately so you can get at least 6 damage over 2 turns. But that's not enough unless you draw more damage off the top. So he's going for the Skull here, looking for... Wow!
That's just it. if he went for the Warglaves, he was just dead on board. He didn't find any healing or removal. Out of nowhere, Shaxy just took the game.
Did that really add to 22? My gosh, I wasn't even...
exactly 22.
Oh my gosh.
With the, I think with the Warglaves in hand. So maybe actually on board, FroStee wasn't dead, but it was as good as dead because there's just so many ways to set up lethal there.
That was a huge swing. We were talking about how the freezes from FroStee, aptly, yet again, were absolutely game-breaking. They shut off the glaive bound from Shaxy, or so we thought, but it was actually playing the glaive bound for tempo and buffing it outside of the range of the other glaive bound that gave FroStee, that gave Shaxy the license to just take back the board.
Such a good spot, Gia. That one play alone that looked so weird. You never ever want to do that against Demon Hunter. But that one play alone won him the game. If he hadn't gone for that, he would have been under way too much pressure and wouldn't have been closing out the game quickly enough on the other side in order to turn things around. So a very well-played game by Shaxy. Again, these weird alternate lines that he is able to find in order to close out the game, working very, very well for him indeed. And now he is left with only the Druid, the list that we are not so fond of, Gia, and he has to take just one game against either Zoo or Demon Hunter.
Right. I have a lot of things to say about this Druid, and I'll let some of them speak for themselves. They're just facts. He's playing 2 of Claw, 1 of Starfall, no Ysera, 1 Power of the Wild, 1 Savage Roar, 1 Wild Growth.
Those are just facts. I agree.
Yes. So if you haven't developed an opinion on that yet, I'm going to give you mine, which is that if there's any of these cards that you should be copies of, it is not Claw.
Yeah.
Power of the Wild seems like the #1 candidate to have more than 1 copy of. But we're seeing it come into play for Shaxy here. The benefit of Claw, I suppose, compared to Crystal Power is that it can kill fairy dragons.
Personally, Gia, I couldn't imagine not playing 2 copies of Claw in my Druid. I have no idea what you're talking about at all. But me and Shaxy are of a different caliber, I think it's fair to say.
Sure, different. For you, lower. For Shaxy, higher. I can get behind that. They're both
Exactly, you saw through my ruse all along. But now, FroStee getting off to a blisteringly start here with, again, pretty much the perfect curve. The Battle Fiend, the Umberwing, into the Satyr, into the second Satyr, should he need. But Shaxy's hand here, this is shaping up so nicely in response.
He's got such powerful plays available after Wild Growth, but the damage he takes this turn to set up for it is very, very crucial.
It's crucial, but I think it's weatherable for the moment.
But look, the sidekick draw. Oh, FroStee holds back on it, but I wonder if there was board space, right? If he goes over here, then sidekick, and then attack, you don't get the full development, but you set up something that survives past the Starfall.
Well, this play is strongest of all around Starfall because he doesn't commit the second Satyr.
Okay.
Obviously, we can see there is the answer for Shaxy in the Starfall plus coin into Claw in order to clear things off. Or Crystal Power, even better.
Right.
But that does make next turn that a little bit more awkward.
Yeah, for Shaxy, he really wants to hold on to this coin because the Mount Seller can pop off as early as next turn, or even Kael'thas.
Kael'thas, yeah. Can he hold on, Gia? Can he just go for Starfall on its own and not go for clearing off the Satyr?
I think he can. It is so dependent on what the next draw is. If it's something huge for Kael'thas, he absolutely can. Like, Overflow would be all of the healing, all of the health that he lost.
Ooh. He is going next level and just throwing down the Glowfly and tanking all of this damage from FroStee.
What?
How much damage even is this?
It's 14 with the Glaive Bound?
Well, he's not dead, but with the pickup of the Metamorphosis as well, even with a taunt that's available for Shaxy, I think FroStee's just got too much here.
But FroStee, of course, has got to be scared of lethal on the other side. Shaxy's bluffing it.
Oh my
he doesn't
God.
have Savage Roar in hand, but for all FroStee knows, this play is signaling that.
This is a next level bluff from Shaxy.
It really is.
I have no idea if this is the worst play I've ever seen or the best play I've ever seen. It's one of the two.
Yeah. I can see the brilliance of it because if you save Starfall for Kael'thas, it doesn't lose any efficacy unless, of course, FroStee gets rid of his board. But if you do it the other way around, you have significantly less spells for Glowfly with Kael'thas. So he's using this first Glowfly as removal.
And FroStee here is saying, you know what, I don't buy any of what you're selling. I'm going to ship all of this directly to the face and close it out next turn.
The only out for lethal here from Shaxy would have been exactly Power of the Wild plus Savage Roar and Claw, I think. It's like a 3 or 4 card combo. In any case, he's able to stabilize.
He is. And the Metamorphosis alone isn't enough to get the job done. Ironbark comes down next turn. Claw could even gain 2 armor. That might be the difference maker.
Claw's the nuts. I'm stupid, Derek. I hate it. Never doubt the Claw. If Galakron, then you should too.
Yeah, you should have known all along. The real answer, the Claw.
His weakness.
Wait, he's scrounging together what damage he can, but this is the pop-off for Shaxy now. Mount Stellar. With the Innervate! Not that he really, but it's just more minions.
Absolutely insane. Gotta remember to find board space. Don't be going too crazy yet, Shaxy.
Trade off one of these Glowflies into the Sager.
So the only thing that he is afraid of now, really,
Is Kael'thas?
is Kayn.
Sorry, Kayn.
Well,
yeah, you're right.
Yes.
Ugh.
Wrong K.
I hate it. Too many K legendaries. Kel'Thuzad, Kanrathad. Thing is, Shaxy doesn't have the 2 turns so far. He's summoned very low attack beasts, not really under pressure.
Which means for FroStee, he can go Metamorphosis here, Ping Face. Next turn, if he draws Kael'thas, again I did it too. If he draws Kayn off the top, I think that would give him exact lethal.
I like the idea of setting up Metamorphosis now, but the Skull, if it's not outcasted now, and of course Skull gives him the best chance of drawing Kayn ASAP.
Yep.
Freeze is a big deal. Oh, there's the Kayn!
There it is.
Does he just... You cash it in now, right? While the 2 minions can still go phase 2.
How much does it get you? You can get the 3 from Kayn, 5, 6, 7. Like, it's quite a lot of damage, actually.
He even plays the Chaos Strike. He can freeze the Mount Seller as well.
Demons. Time grows short.
And then, if that doesn't get there, Metamorphosis over 2 turns surely would, barring exactly Overflow and second Crystal of Power, I guess. I really like this.
I like it too. Maximum damage to the Domegear. He missed the Twin Slice!
Ooh.
He got Twin Slice off the top but missed it! That would have set up perfect lethal!
He could still do it next turn, unless Kayn probably
Kayn
will to
dies.
the poison, you're right.
Whoa.
We can see though that if one of these 1/1 survives with Ive Beam, that can remove the taunt.
Great point.
Oh, sorry. The Mount Seller is also a taunt. Didn't see
Yeah,
it through
yeah.
the freeze. And there's gonna be more taunts. So FroStee has to find more burst. Or a way to survive past this turn from Shaxy.
Oh, but there's the overflow off the top for Shaxy.
Oh my gosh.
You can just heal up next turn.
Or win with the Savage Roar if FroStee doesn't actually
Time waits for no one.
find a way to deal the lethal. So are we looking at... Oh man, Gravebound is not enough mana. Play both of them.
I mean, this is just so easily lethal on the following turn for Shaxy
Yes.
unless FroStee finds something magical right now.
He's not playing the silences.
FroStee looks happy though. Don't know why. Or maybe he was frustrated. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
He's Australian.
Everything's upside down there. Oh my gosh. So he can
Grow impatient.
just go fishing first and still play Metamorphosis if he needs to. But he can't also fit in I-Beam with the hero power.
That's just it, Gia.
It's not if he I-Beams something, right? If he I-Beams the 3/3 and hero powers to get rid of the... Oh man, it is... You definitely don't want to do that. So it is probably just game.
Grows short.
For FroStee here, of course it's scary to play into Savage Roar, but his own game plan says Metamorphosis now. Oh! Getting around it.
He's able to survive just. But we can see, even if the
Okay.
lethal doesn't come down, does that even matter?
Okay, I think FroStee's thought process is this plays around Savage Roar and gives him an out for Glavebound off the top, but it does not
Right.
play around Overflow.
So there's no lethal here available. 13.
It doesn't
I'll
even
say
it doesn't even play
21,
for
22.
doesn't even play for Glavebound if Shaxy does Savage Roar now. Because then FroStee
Right,
can't
because he
attack
couldn't-
into the taunt. Yeah.
Yes. Unless, of course, a Silverback Patriarch is summoned.
Oh my gosh. That is pretty funny how that works out.
Okay.
Right?
So I think we're still setting up for an overflow here.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. That's the one thing that needed to happen here, 100%.
Time waits for no one.
Oh, Patriarch! But now Shaxy has enough health that it doesn't even matter that the Glaive
Crystal
Bound
power as well.
potentially go face, yeah. My gosh.
Oh, Gia, the second time today we are seeing a player 0-2 down, having the potential to take the win, and just losing it at the last minute.
This is
It's brutal
really-
for FroStee because it was just rope factors that got him down there,
Yeah.
but it's still something you have to take into account.
There are not many classes that can draw 0 mana spells off the top that you want to play on the same turn. For Druid,
Yeah.
you probably don't want to innervate when you've already spent all your mana. For Rogue, sometimes, but it's just, I think something that I have not necessarily gotten completely used to yet from Demon Hunter, but it is a strict misplay, so we do have to point that out. But my gosh, it's hard to watch. You did point out both of them 0-2, and that was the last game of the series. No chance for redemption within the same day.
That's right. Absolutely brutal stuff. It means Dawn and now FroStee are both going down to 0-3. It could be a repeat of what we saw last season between some of the players down at the bottom of the group, like Blood Trail and Samuel Sow and Patra thrown in there as well, where they're all just fighting against each other to try and avoid relegation right down at the bottom. And this year, unless something magical turns around for these players in the next couple of weeks, it's looking like Dawn and sadly FroStee as well, joining them down at the bottom. But we are all done with that series. We can again take a breather as we are flying through this day very, very quickly indeed, even with a Game 5 with Tyler versus Dawn. So we're going to go to a quick break, let our players get ready for the next match of the day. But don't go anywhere. This is an action-packed day as the round robin really starts kicking off here at Hearthstone Grandmasters.